Hello, hello, hello. My name is Alexander Speaks, and welcome to a Grimoire Ramble. If this is your first time, this is where I pull out my Grimoire and I ramble. And you may want to pull out your Grimoire, a sketchbook, a journal, a diary, some household chores, or anything really that you, my bestie, wants company while working on. Please feel free to pour yourself a cup of cool water because I know I never get enough water myself. These rambles are typically on the cuff and full of imperfections for the imperfect artist. And with that out of the way, let me tell you what I'm going to be working on and what I'll be rambling about. In my grimoire today, I'll be working on a magical self-portrait spell using occult symbology through surrealistic techniques. And today, I'll be rambling about claiming witchhood, defining the witch, magic of self-portraits, and oracle reading, and more. And with that out of the way, let's get started. I don't know if it's just me, and I'm 100% sure, it just can't be me, right? It just can't not just be me alone in this. But there's this fear, right? There's this sense of trepidation when you're watching people on YouTube, right? And you're like, I want to do that too. I want to do that too. I want to be Molly Roberts. I want to be Kelly Maddox. I want to be, you're listening off the people that you watch and you're like, I want to make videos like how they want to make videos, right? I want to do what they want to do. And I think that there's a lot to that. There's the fact that for one of them, or first not one, for some of the people that we may be talking about, right? This is their main form of marketing, right? It's the main form of them giving back to their community. It's the main form of marketing. It's them doing their job, right? And we may be approaching that from the sense of maybe a sense of mimicry. We may be approaching that from a sense of ideation, I wish I XYZ thing. It could be a sense of daydreaming. We may be coming towards it as I want to be on YouTube and I want to say, here's my newsletter. And I want to say, here's my art product and have it be a source of fun. That's all fine and great, right? I personally feel for me, there was definitely this wave of, I want to make YouTube videos. I want to do this. I want to do that. And the way my brain works, the way I function is I have to really sit with what I want to do. And I want to get to the base of it. I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to know, why is it that I want to make YouTube videos? Why is it that I don't want to make YouTube videos? Where is this fear coming from, right? Why is it coming up all of a sudden? And when it comes down to it, at least for me, right? The grimoire spread that I'm working on, it actually has a lot to do with this theme. It has to do with a lot of the self, right? I, for the longest time, thought that I wanted to make YouTube videos like Kelly and Maddox or any other, the witchcraft, the tarot tube, any other person, right? And it wasn't even just witchcraft spaces. Part of it was I want to be some of the artists that I follow, because I follow a lot of artists myself, and what they do is they're hey, what's up, you guys? Yes, my name is insert artist here, and here's all the artwork that I did for this month. And I'm going to walk you through all the artwork I did for this month, or hey, there's this project I'm working on. I even really, really wanted to do video essays, and I still do to some point, and I don't think there's anything wrong with me as a person doing a video essay. But what I do think is that all of that, what it was, is me saying I want to be like that person, not I want to do my version of it. And that fear that was coming out, it could have been a sense of am I being authentic? Am I showing myself 100%? But it could also, and what it ended up being was that I was trying to be another person. I was trying to be a figment of another person, rather than saying this is who I am, this is where I am. I'm not going to show you, and I'm not going to post on YouTube the same stuff that I see elsewhere, right? You're not going to be able to go on my channel and expect to see tarot walkthroughs and have my tarot walkthrough be the exact same as every other tarot walkthrough. Because what I've learned through deep introspection is that the way I talk, the way I walk, the way I present myself, the way that I express myself, even my points, the things I want to talk about with tarot decks, they are not what I am seeing online. And I used to think for the longest time, I can't do this. I just can't do it. I don't see anybody like me. I don't belong here. And like in hindsight, that's kind of a silly, stupid thought, isn't it? Like, oh, in business terms, right? Because like technically you could consider this marketing, right? It could be there's no one on the market and I'm the only one on the market like this. That's an untapped niche. Or artistically, it could be you have an individual voice. Wouldn't you want to show it off, right? You have something special. And all of the content, all of the videos, all of the resources you see online about like, you want a business, you want an artist, you want a platform, it's all about like, how can you be an individual? And yet, all that I desired up until this point was, how can I be somebody else? A bit of this does come from like videos that I saw. I'm thinking about one in particular that Kellyanne Maddox made. It was about defining witchhood. What does it mean to be a witch? What does it mean to be a witch today? What does it mean to be a witch tomorrow? There was some past content I saw from other people like, well, what was the purpose of witches, right? Why were people witches in the past? What were their job? If you were a witch, which, there's a good chance that if you're listening, you could identify, maybe not, maybe you just like art, right? What does it mean for you to be a witch today? And if you're not, let's say you're just a spiritual person, let's say you're just a tarot reader, let's say you're not even that, you're just an artist, right? Maybe not even that. Let's just say person, lowest common denominator. Here we go. I would have to ask myself, what is the difference between the type of person in my role back in the day, whatever I said back in the day too, compared to me today? And when we get into defining the witch, defining what that means, my point of view is like, well, back in the day, right, analogous, when I think of witch, I think about midwives. I think about women who specialize in healing and healthcare, who specialize in helping women give birth, helping people give birth, right? Part of that is, if we're going to fully get into it, part of it could be medicinal, right? Part of it could also be holistic. Part of it could be therapeutic, like conversations. Part of it with people who give birth, it could be mental health, right? There's not just one cure-all answer for people who give birth and the healthcare that they would need in, let's just say, the 1400s, right? There's not. But obviously, today, in the role in which I'm alive and I'm present and I'm here, I do not exist as a midwife. So what is the purpose of being a witch? Why are we here? What do we do? And how come we can't stop saying, well, I'm more powerful than you, or you're more powerful than me? I'm not going to really step on the last one, but what I will say is this whole self-portrait here and the magic of self-portraits is starting by defining who you are. For me, as you can probably see by now, I don't actually have a sun as my face. I don't. I'm drawing a sun as my face, but I don't. I'm using this idea of maybe using like old occult imagery, where it's almost as if like, well, this bird represents this, and this egg represents this, and people at the time knew that. It's like this weird thing where people are mixing pieces of this and pieces of that to create the overall image. And part of it definitely is like the creation of the work as the art spell, and we'll get into that. But another part of it is like, what are the parts being shown? We're looking at a chimeric demon of sorts, and it has part snake here, part lion here, part, well, what does that mean? What do the animals mean? What do the parts represent? I think that part of I would say chimeric magic, in the sense of, well, what does this body part mean? And what is this meaning behind it with this color and this animal? I see that a lot in Thoth and Thoth tarot decks, right? With like, oh, well, it's a green shirt, but what is the meaning of the green shirt? And what is the meaning of green? And this person is wearing boots, but the boots are colored this, and what does it mean for boots? And it can be very, at least from my point of view, it can be a lot of heaviness. It can be a lot of cerebralness, a lot of thinking it through in a very unnecessary way. So point blank, right? I have a sun face. And I think a lot of witches feel connection to the moon. I guess you could say connection to the moon. You could say a lot of different things. You could say maybe affinity to the moon. You could say ideation with the moon. There's definitely a lot of moon worshipping witches, and we can get into that with another episode of witchcraft beyond just writing the moon phases in your grimoire. But I didn't want to emphasize that. My head is a sun. That means the process of me thinking, the process of me speaking, the way I see the world, the way the world sees me. We're talking about the social persona mask that I am wearing, the way that I will be treated, the way people will see me and define my value and my worth. I am defining by the sun image. Now, for some people, they would pull from like the sun from tarot and tarot imagery, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in this case, I am specifically using the sun as an image of light bringer, light bearer, a thing of being a person in it that shows light, that reveals, that tells the truth about something, right? There's a lot of, in witchcraft spaces that I've seen, I'm a powerful witch, and I've done this, and I've done that, right? And this self-portrait doesn't have anything to do with that conversation. It's removed from the conversation, and as a result, it's still participating. It's saying, you know, you guys are busy worrying about this, right? This is what I, on the side, have decided is important. This is what I, on the side, have decided I want to talk about. So it's very much, as a conversation, Five of Swords. You know, one person's fighting with one person, and I'm over here saying, like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to interact with that. I don't feel like that's healthy. I don't feel like that's important. I don't feel like that's actually bringing anything anywhere. It's wasting my time, to be honest, right? I'd rather pay attention to this. I'd rather bring awareness to this. I'd rather complain and let people know that I'm complaining. And that's the sun card. Not the sun card. That's the sun face. And remember, this is a face. So this is something that in my witchcraft, in my practice, this is something that I'm saying within this self-portrait, I'm consistently thinking about. This is my decision making. I'm consistently following it. Now, the rest of the symbols. We can talk about the blue and black sweater. We can talk about the pink triangle. We can talk about the drag face. We could talk about the rain, the rainbow. We could talk about the Pluto sign. And I'm not going to touch on everything because I'm going to be honest, there's no way for me to coherently express every single aspect and every single detail of an artistic piece and be like, and now we're done. Everything's explained and we're on the same page now. Like, there's no way. I'm always going to miss something. Someone is always going to misinterpret it. And that's part of the power and the magic of self-portraits is it's not always for other people. It's for you. It's for recentering yourself. So if I'm feeling lost, if I'm feeling like I lost my way, not in like a great tragic sense, but in the way of like, I'm just not sure how I should handle the situation. I'm not sure what I should do. Here we go. I said I look like that. I said this is who I am, right? If I'm saying my job is to point out the truth, even if people don't want to hear it, then if I'm stuck, I have to say, well, what is the truth? What is the truth right now that I don't even want to know? I don't want to pay attention to. I'm uncomfortable by the fact, but this is the reality of the situation. That's me recentering. You can also use self-portraits as a form of magic for empowerment. Now, I know that we talked about this hypothetical argument between two witches saying, oh, I'm stronger than you than this, and I'm stronger than you than that, right? I'm not talking about empowerment in the sense of there has to be one witch that is stronger and better and more supreme than the rest. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a dialogue that you have with yourself where you say, okay, my name is Alexander Speaks. I have been a witch for X amount of years, and within those amount of years, I have worked on these types of spells, these types of themes, these types of projects. This is what I have gotten the most success with. This is what I have gotten the most failures with, right? This is where I know my stuff, right? At the end of the day, this is what I know. This is what, if you were to come to me, right? What can I say? Without a doubt, people can come to me and we can talk about it and they get their answer. And for me, it's a bit of, it's a journey, it's a quest, it's a bit of a conversation and saying, okay, over time, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned is maybe a new strength that you didn't realize that you had. Maybe what is a strength that you felt really connected to that isn't there anymore? What about you? Do you want to celebrate? Do you want to say, I did it. I can do this. I got this. And that's a type of empowerment. And in many ways, it's empowerment. And in many ways, it's self-loving. When we talk about witchcraft as an act, right? Not as this form of other, witchcraft as the other, which we all know, and we should all be understanding and knowing witchcraft as the other as like a political entity of othering, right? We can say, well, what do witches do, right? What do witches do? Do they curse people? Do they hex people? Do they do rituals? Do they do spells? I heard that they actually get naked and they dance naked underneath the full moon, and they sign the book in blood. You know, it's about what do we hear that they do? Well, continuing that conversation of self-love, you can continue this with a bit of puppet magic, right? You have in your book, your grimoire, if you've done this, your self-portrait, you have a puppet. You have an image of you. You have a two-way street of this is you at a certain time and what that certain time says about you. And ways that you can do self-love magic, the ways that you can work around it, it's very individualistic, you know. You could speak to your self-portrait, you could sing to it, you could put flowers on top of it, you could Depending on like what type of person you are, maybe you could spray some perfume on yourself, your favorite perfume. Maybe you could play a song out loud. You could put herbs on yourself. Like there's many different things that you can do, especially with what you are trying to empower. And there's this very real treasure in saying, you know what? The world is hard. The world kicks you like rocks down a road. The world just keeps going, right? I know the world is not fair. I'm trying to make it fair. But the world as it is, it's just not what I want it to be. But that doesn't mean I can't stop myself from treating myself the way I want to be. And I think this wall that shows up, this obstacle that is showing up is like, well, I don't want to be egotistical, you know? I don't be like, well, I'm the best witch, I'm the best over here, everyone else is peasants and serfs. I don't want to be that witch, right? And a bit of that can come from like our daily lives and meeting people who were like that, who were saying, you know, I am like that, everyone shut up and listen to me. But I think that a good saying that I would use, or at least I would tell a friend, is if being hard on yourself worked, how come it hasn't worked yet? If you being rude to yourself and saying, oh, I don't want to be that person, right? If that was accurate, if that was truthful, right? How come it hasn't worked? Because it sounds like, at least bestie, between me, you, and everyone else is listening, it sounds to me like many times like you put yourself down to say, I don't want to be this egotistical person. And it wasn't even a chance of you being egotistical. It was just that you had gotten used to the feelings of putting yourself down as a routine, that it felt more normal to say, I should be quiet, I should be silent, I shouldn't be speaking here. And what I feel like that can do as a witch when you're not developing a healthy conversation, a healthy dialogue with yourself, is it prevents the changing of the seasons. It prevents you from developing as a person. Creative people, whether you consider yourself an artist, a creative, or you just have an eye for it, right? You definitely know that you go through your own seasons. You go through seasons where you're fruitful and you're abundant and you're just you're prolific, you know? And then you go through your autumns. You go through your autumns where you retire, you get a little quieter, you require more alone time, maybe more consideration, more introspection. And this is different, and I feel like this is important to mention. This is different from depression, right? I'm not talking about medical diagnosed depression. I'm talking about the cycles of a person, the cycles of saying, you know what, I feel very confident. I feel a little less confident. I need some time to recover. I need some time to reconsider, right? If you don't have that, you're not growing. You're staying stagnant. What would happen to the world if the world just stopped turning and you lived in whatever season you're in now? If we lived in, not that this would actually happen because I'm not a scientist, but if you lived in winter forever, you lived in summer forever, you lived in spring, fall, what if you lived in this season forever, right? If you lived in fall, I know we talked about the importance of it just a second ago, but you would get stuck consistently in a cycle of tearing yourself down as a person, as, you know, an environment, a community, right? Things would just stop living and be consistently into a sense of not enough sunlight, depending on where you live. Maybe not. Maybe you live in a place where fall, autumn isn't that pronounced, right? For me personally, where I live, things are dead. Things are dead. They're not coming back alive. It looks like the world has just blinked for a second. You know, when you have your eyes closed and the light is peeking through, but your eyes aren't fully open. It's like that. We're looking, ecology speaking, environmentally speaking, we're looking through a closed eyelid. And for me personally, like, I have done many self-portraits before. You know, I've done photo self-portraits. I've done watercolor self-portraits that were shadow portraits. I've done portraits where it was more realistic, more zoomed in, more zoomed out. I think self-portraits in general they're just a good form of saying, like, how do I understand myself? When we were talking about, like, what does it mean to be a witch and claiming witchhood, which we didn't really finish the conversation on claiming witchhood, and we'll get back to it. But when we got to it, a bit of it is like, what does it mean to be a witch? How do I understand that, right? A witch does what? Well, back in the day, witches did this, but what does today? What do they do, right? Well, I thought at one point that witches made YouTube channels. And then I didn't do that. And then I realized, oh, you know, witches don't make YouTube channels. Witches do whatever witches want to do. And some people who happen to be witches make YouTube channels. And some people who do witchcraft don't make YouTube channels. It's not that big of a deal as I was making it to be. The main last thing I want to talk about when it comes to the magic of self-portraits has to do with the dating of it, the dating of photography. So I am a what's in the long run story type of person, right? I think that we can do, like, politically speaking, art-wise, witchcraft speaking, socially, emotionally, community-based, we can do stuff today that is harm reduction, that is reducing the amount of struggling today, that makes the world a better place today, and maybe doesn't answer all the problems, but will get us there in the long run, right? I'm not going to turn down a short-term solution because it's not utopia. I'll turn down a short-term solution if it's not really a solution, it's a band-aid. But I'm consistently working towards fixing the now and working towards the long run. And when you have a mindset like that, you think, I don't know what I'm going to look like tomorrow, but I know what I'm going to look like today. And you build this image in your mind of a scrapbook of life, of who you were as a child through different segments of a child. Now, I know in witchcraft spaces, we talk a lot about inner child work. And I believe I was speaking to a friend a good 2 or 3 years before I heard this term about, like, your inner teenager. But I was making a point of, if you believe that there's an inner child, right? You fully believe that there's an inner child person within you. And I'm not trying to be rude, right? Why does it stop as a child? And what age is that child? What age is that child? What I saw was a lot of people, they started and stopped the conversation with, I have an inner child. And if it really came down to it, if push became to shove, you know, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Joan of Arc was here and we're holding you at knife point, right? They say, like, oh, my inner artist is like 6 years old, right? I'm like, what about 5-year-old you? What about 4-year-old you? What about 13-year-old you, right? There has to be a infinite amount of yous within you based on the years of which you've been alive and your interactions with people. Your self-portrait is not only a record of how you exist to yourself, the persona of you to you. There's different versions of you, and it's also what isn't you, right? I drew a sun, right? I could have drawn a moon. I could have drawn a hand. I could have drawn a star, right? I could have drawn a Ford truck. I could have drawn lots of different things, right? Our understanding of ourselves through different time changes. And the portraits that I've made, they've established a working history, a living document of sorts of saying, I've changed through time. Here's who I've changed as. At one point, at that point, I knew myself as, oh, my name is blank. I weighed this much. I was this tall. And this is what I'm doing right now in school. And that's the beginning and end of the conversation of how I knew myself. And at some points I said, my name is blank. I'm this years old and I don't know what's going on. There's a certain level of honesty in saying, I'm doing a self-portrait because I don't know who I'm going to be, but right now this is who I am and I want to create a record of that. You know, not every grimoire has to be a huge codex of symbols and riddles and secret codes of recipes, right? I use the blood of a raven on the 7th day of the 7th week of the 7th year. Like, you don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be that for you, and it may not be that for you. And if it is, please share me photos because I want to see. I'm just a little curious. But in many ways, your grimoires can be a living document of who you are, of who you were, of who you could have been, right? I could go on and on and on about this notion of persona, of how the you that exists within you is not the same you that exists outside of you, and how they change, you know? Like, there's the you that you know, there's the you that maybe a mom would know if you have a mom, a dad would know, or dads would know, your grandpa would know. There's the ones that a brother or sister could know, your job, a stranger on the street. You know, who you are and who people have known you to be consistently changes. And who your mom knows you as is not who you are. At least that's what I believe, you know? There's different versions of you, and there's no way that a person who doesn't get to step inside your head and listen to your thoughts and feel what you feel would have a deeper understanding in completion of the entirety of your soul and who you are than you would of yourself. There's just no way, you know? And that's going back to defining the witch. That's what this is about. You're saying, I may not have all the answers, but I'm drawing who I am right now. I'm saying, as a witch, or if you're not a witch, right, you're just doing a self-portrait, as an artist, as a creative, as a person with an eye, as a spiritualist, as, who knows, whatever label you choose. This is how I see myself. This is how I understand myself. I'm saying, back in the day, witches used to be midwives, right? And today, I'm saying witches could be many different things. For me, being a witch means someone who consistently works with Pluto magic, someone who consistently reveals the truth. Maybe someone who uses their pain, uses their shadow, uses their trauma to heal others. Maybe I say witches are someone who works hard in Chiron magic with astrology. Maybe I'm someone who says, I'm a witch, and witches work with ancestors. I have to define the rules in which witch lives. I'm going to spoil that at the end of almost all my grimoire illustrations, right, there's some form of writing. I know that there's text on the page. I'm writing more, right? At the end of this illustration, It says, where does a witch like me belong in this world? And that's the main question as I'm trying to define witch with this illustration, as I'm asking you to define witch. What do? You know? Do you talk to ghosts? Are you an herbal witch? Do you cook? Are you a kitchen witch? I know that people use these labels because it helps them understand, and I think there's definitely another Grimoire and Ramble there on the limitations of identity politics and identity labels in witchcraft. But we're going depth, we're going not that deep, but we're still going depth. What do you do as a witch? Are you an astral witch? Are you a divination witch? I particularly, in myself, I would define myself as a divination witch. I mean, I wouldn't use that as like the solo term, but I would definitely say that the main tenets of myself as a witch include divination. Divination is here. They said hello, hi, how are you? They're present. So how would you define a witch? What do you do? Are you a witch because of what you do or because of what you believe? Is a witch a thing that exists because of deity worship? Are you a deity worshiper? Are you less of a witch and maybe more of a practitioner? In many ways, I do consider this sun face, this light bearer, as a form of healing. I already have like the next Grimoire Ramble recorded and everything, and we'll get into there. But I do mention about like politics. I definitely do feel like in the world there is a semblance of game, of like an arcade game. This is something that I'm doing for fun, and I think that there's a lot of, for lack of better words, like projection. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of inauthenticity. There's a lot of how can I benefit the most from the situation and ruin the lives of everyone else around me, right? Because this is fun and this is fun for me. And I think that this light bearer, in some sense, this person who says, what is the truth of this about the situation? I think in many ways that is healing. I personally find that to be a healing quality. I would definitely not say that I'm a midwife, but I would definitely say that there's some level of healing, at least for me. And that's something that I wanted to honor for myself in this self-portrait. And part of that is how I defined the witch. Witch, for me, as I identify and define the label witch, the witch is someone who tells the truth. The witch is someone who works with deep pains, deep shadow, deep trauma, and still tells jokes. Is still a clown of sorts that still is able to reach into the shadow, reach into the deepest part, and still say, you know what? I know that this is a very serious subject. I know this is really hard, but comedy is tragedy at a distance, and I can at least alleviate some of that tragedy with a few choice words right now. I define witch as someone who works with their ancestors, whether that means through divination, through life choices. I define witch as someone who can use alchemy, inner alchemy and external alchemy, to maybe change the situation of who made you who you are. Maybe take a bad story, a bad setting, and make the best of it. I have, in my self-portrait, added the Pluto sign because there's many different ways that I use Pluto and Plutonian magic, but I think a witch, in the way I describe it, is someone who's consistently changing, consistently developing, consistently growing. And there is that depth and shadow that I've already expressed with the Pluto sign, with like the rest of the illustration. But a lot of Pluto, for me, definitely has to deal with Chiron. It has to do with rebirth or renewal. And that's very autumnal. It's very phoenix-like. It's very fiery in its way of saying, like, this is not over. But it's not fiery in the sense of the way I would use, like, rebirth and the phoenix sense. Pluto, in this sense, the way I personally interpret it, the way I personally use it, it feels colder, it feels icier, it feels more reserved, right? The only shocking, loud element of my self-portrait is my skin as the sun, which is revealing, right? It's me saying the only part about me that is loud, that is present, that is catching people's attention is that I am revealing the truth as I personally see it, right? I'm not saying I have access to objective truth that no one else can reach, that no one else can understand. What I'm saying is, for me, I can say this is the truth as I know it. This is the truth as I have lived it for me. And it may not be the truth for you, but it's the truth for me. The rest of the image continues with that cold Plutonian energy of reservedness, you know? The blue and black sweater, it has connotations to a culture. It brings up question of culture of, is culture what you wear, or is it what you do, or is it what you listen to, or is it something that happens to you, right? There's this juxtaposition between the bright sun and, for lack of better words, because this is kind of the word I would use to describe it, this gothic sweater. I probably wouldn't describe it as the most gothic sweater in the world, but it's definitely gothic in its own way. And that's how I've chosen to define the witch. As I said, this is who I am. This is how I've understood myself. How can I incorporate these in an image? How can I take what I want to see myself as, or how I actually see myself as, and treat it like a metaphor, right? If I said, well, I'm a person who always tells the truth even if people don't like it, how would that be interpreted, right? I could do myself as a sun, as a face. I could do a Queen of Swords element. I could just use sword symbology. Like, there's many different ways about it. So if you were to do this for yourself, part of it would say, like, how do you define yourself as a witch? Listing out that traits, right? I am a energy worker who does kitchen work and kitchen magic, and my main practice is cleansing. Well, okay. Where would the metaphor be? Well, let's say I'm doing energy work and I really want to focus on that. Maybe I could do a self-portrait through negative drawing, right? Maybe I cover the entire page in charcoal and I actually erase myself into the drawing as an image. Maybe I'm talking about kitchen work, right? Maybe my head is a mortar and pestle. Maybe I have a chef's apron on. Maybe I have a chef's hat on, you know? Maybe I'm holding a plate of food, and not just any food, but a spiritually significant recipe. If I'm doing cleansing work, maybe I'm holding, I don't know, some cleansing herbs like cedar or lavender, right? That's just how you would describe yourself and phrase yourself within the metaphor. And that's how you are defining witch. And then when you take that, when you're done with that, when you're sketching it out, right? Every step into the drawing is you saying, this is me. This is me. This is who I am. I am claiming it. I am saying, here I am as I understand myself to be. I'm not trying to boost my ego. I'm not trying to degrade myself, right? This is me trying to accept me for who I am, how I am, with no judgment. And I think if you're doing that and This isn't new for you. I think you should be proud of yourself. I think you should maybe pause this video right now. Maybe stand up, maybe not. Pat yourself on the back and say, I'm doing something that I've never done before. I'm trying hard to capture something that for many people, it's really hard. It's really hard for people to say, this is who I am, and not feel like not only are they missing something, but they're missing something to the point of, paralysis, of saying like, I feel stuck. I have to include everything. You should feel proud of yourself if this is your first time. And after you've claimed it, you should say, okay, now what? I am here, I am present, I am happy, I am a witch. Now what? Where does a witch like me belong in this world? And for this, we're circling all the way back in the beginning of where I was saying, like, I want to be a YouTuber like Molly Roberts. I want to be a YouTuber like Kellyanne Maddox. And it was just a lot of like me saying, I as a witch belong in this world to fill this role. But the role I didn't fit into, right? I wasn't a worshiper of hell like Kellyanne Maddox, right? I didn't have a long-standing history of me as an artist with different shows and me in art school. I didn't have that pizzazz of drawing mercats like Molly Roberts. I had me, right? And I wasn't either of them. So I did not belong in this world like they did, because I wasn't them. I was me. I'm claiming witchhood by saying, I think that I belong as an outsider. I belong in that Seven of Swords situation. Now, for me personally, I think that there's a set description of how we understand, I would say, collectively the Seven of Swords in the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. And for me, I think that your job as a witch, part of that Pluto, part of that is having your own correspondences, your own understanding of the cards, your own meanings that you develop slowly over time, or with lots of experience, or maybe both. Both would be nice, Both would be really great if we could both have long lives, that we all feel fruitful, that we all live well, that we all enjoy. But what I often find, going back to that, is like the Seven of Swords is often seen as an other, a thief, as a dangerous outsider, someone who's morally gray, right? The other as derogative. And I definitely, when I see the Seven of Swords, I don't see that, right? I think the typical Rider-Waite-Smith Seven of Swords, I could see it and I could get it. But bestie, I don't actually use, if I can be honest, the typical Rider-Waite-Smith deck that often. I have a Rift that I use, a Rider-Waite-Smith Rift, but that's not even my main deck, right? I don't have a main deck. I have plenty of resources that I can go through. And for me, I read the Seven of Swords as an outsider, positive, as like this icon of queerness and otherness. And I think where I belong in a world like this, where does a witch like me belong, is an outsider among outsiders, at least as I've understood it, right? I definitely feel like I've tried interacting with many different communities before, and I've tried it in, name a way that a witch can be, name a way a person could be, and I've tried it, and I just don't belong, right? I have not belonged in these spaces before, and it's just as simple as, maybe I am an outsider among outsiders. Maybe I should focus a little less on trying to fit in, and a little bit more of, I will fit in when I fit in, but till then, I have to cut my own road. I have to say, where does a witch like me belong in this world? Walking my own path, lighting my own candles, and being proud of it. Just something for you to consider. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. As always, let me pull a quick card for you. This is to help us with the theme of today. So that has to do with grimoires, grimoire magic, self-identity, self-understanding, self-portraits, defining witchhood, claiming witchhood. And I'm actually going to be pulling a deck from the Fuzzy Prism Oracle deck. I'm going to be honest, I got this deck. I got it for posterity because I was getting the other 2 decks that this creator made, and I didn't think I would like it, but I actually really, really love it. I got really connected to this deck for a period of time, and I personally find that it pulls typical cards with unique meanings. Like, I don't get typical A plus B equals C readings, which I really love. So as I pull this card, just know it's just something for us to go forward and think about, especially when we're defining witchhood, when we're defining and claiming witchhood. And I'm actually going to include a link to a video by Kellyanne Maddox on a very, very similar subject, if not the same one, right? I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm going to go back and link it down below, because if you feel stuck, if you want to do this, I want to give you as much in your toolbox as possible. But without pulling forward anymore, the card I pulled is the share card. Now, when I see the share card, I see a red hand and a blue hand. The red hand's at the bottom and it's reaching up to the blue hand. And there's a heart, a star, and a pyramid in between it. And I guess you could say little squiggle lines from both sides of all 3 of those symbols. And it's like both the blue hand and the red hand are both reaching for the same resources. Now, what I personally get from this is, honestly, the word ecosystem. There's definitely this notion of, for someone to win, somebody has to lose. And when we're talking about witchcraft, witchhood, claiming it, that destroys that conversation. That erases it, You being a witch does not mean that somebody else isn't a witch. And in the sense of ecosystem, you have a community, whether you like it or not, whether you're present or not. And you get to ask yourself, within this ecosystem, right, what is being shared with me? What is being shared with me? What am I sharing with others? What is this give and take? What is this back and forth, right? And part of that could be, oh, I don't know what type of witch I am. Well, as a witch, I do find that in XYZ positions, I end up being in a place of giving, in a place of offering to myself to others, right? And in other cases, oh, well, as a witch, I personally find that I enjoy when witches do XYZ thing, and I benefit it, right? There's no one witch who does everything. Maybe you are a person who lights candles. Maybe you're a person who has the ability to ramble on for an hour plus. Maybe you are a witch who can speak with deity easier. Maybe you know how to navigate difficult conversations. Maybe you know how to give good gifts. Maybe you know how to enter in and speak that very, very, very specific, like surgical point of nuance in an argument that completely unravels all aggression and all conflict. Going back to one of the first things I talked about, right? What does it mean to be a witch in the past versus now? It goes back to, well, what are you sharing? What are you giving? In one case, we're giving medicinal help. We're helping people who are giving birth. In another case, there's this sense of disillusionment with the lack of truth, a sense of illusion from believing the lies and manipulation and the marketing. So in that case, giving something which is truth, giving authenticity, you're still giving it away. And you're using that giving of truth, at least in my case, and the way that I thought about it, I'm using that giving away within the ecosystem of witches and the world around me, my own community. I'm using that giving as the main defining force of how do I define a witch. So you might want to ask yourself, like, what am I sharing? What am I willing to give away? What am I willing to discuss? What is not a big deal for me, but people make it a big deal when I talk about it with others, right? I've talked to people who they cannot ground themselves in a stressful situation like an argument to save their life. They just couldn't, They just couldn't do it. If it's a stressful situation, they ran away. So for them, someone who is willing to cause fights, someone who's willing to be confrontational, someone who's willing to be upfront and say, well, this is who I am and this is what I want, right? It may seem like an issue for that person, but for another person, right? Great friends. Great friends. Person one tells person two, I have an issue, I don't know how to deal with it. Person two goes, oh, I got this, I'll just say it to their face. Who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, in ways that the community has given to you, in the ways the community has shared with you, and how you want to give back in that conversation, you can use all of that. All of that in combination with how you have understood yourself to be a witch. And even if you haven't done that, you can use all of that to help define where you belong with what you can do. Because that's what it comes down to, isn't it? We're saying, how do we define witch? Well, we're defining it by what we do. Maybe what we do as physically, maybe what we do as thoughts and beliefs. Like, yeah, I'm a witch because I believe in this and I go forward believing this. It is all based on what are you sharing and what is being shared with you. And with that, I think that I've rambled enough. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you got a lot out of this. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Tell me what type of witch you are. And while you were here with me, thank you. And I'll talk to you later, besties. Bye.